I think our readiness has been badly damaged. We've got 12 combat squadrons that have been grounded. Half of the Air Force is not combat ready. We've got ships that are not being deployed. We've got training rotations that have been canceled. We've got 800,000 federal employees that have been furloughed under sequester and that are now taking a hit on the shutdown. All of this is impacting on our readiness and our ability to be able to handle a major crisis outside of Afghanistan.
That was former Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta speaking this morning on Meet the Press. The impact of the shutdown is being felt all across our military. National Guard personnel are being furloughed and base facilities are being closed. In places like Oregon, where the National Guard can't conduct monthly training exercises, one local commander says the shutdown is, quote, "this is crushing." The partisan back and forth on Capitol Hill has been called an epic battle by House Speaker John Boehner, which prompted this response from a group of veterans.
Americans and American veterans like me depend upon the entire government being open. I served this nation with honor. Today, I can't say the same about most Republicans in Congress.
It's no wonder veterans are worried. Just last week, VA Secretary Eric Shinseki warned as many as 3.8 million vets could go without their disability checks if the shutdown goes much longer. At this moment, 56 regional VA offices are closed, and some 7,800 VA workers have been furloughed. Those workers directly impact some 5.1 million veterans, military families, and survivors who, again, rely on a range of VA services. And one of the things I think it's important to note is that unlike the most recent shutdown in 95 and 96, this one is happening during a time of an active wartime. Some 60,000 Americans are serving in Afghanistan right now alongside NATO forces. And let's not forget that since the 2001 U.S.-led invasion, more than 2,200 American service members have been killed in Afghanistan, the most just recent today near the Pakistan border. That means that the men and women who are fighting on the front lines are there worrying about whether the benefits they were promised will be there when they get home. Joining me now, John Saltz, the chairman of VoteVets.org, the group behind the ad we just showed a moment ago, and Goldie Taylor is an MSNBC contributor and a veteran herself. Thanks to you both for joining me.
Thank you, Karen.
John, I want to start with you because obviously there's been, there was the uproar over the denial of the death benefits. That got resolved, which was, obviously a good thing, but it obviously sparked some activity among your folks. What are you hearing from veterans?
Well, I don't actually know where to start. If you're a veteran right now and you're service-connected and you've been wounded in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam for that matter, in a couple of weeks you're not going to get your disability check. If you're a college student who's under the new GI Bill, you also in several weeks are going to not get your check. If you're a member of the Guard and Reserve and you rely on that income, or if we have a natural disaster and we need the National Guard, we're not ready to go. So obviously in the ad we put out, we talk about the entire government being funded because veterans are so unique in the fact we're affected by the entire federal government. Right. And we were only created by the federal government, and we can only receive benefits from the federal government. And we're affected by every agency out there.
Goldie, there are more than 22 million veterans in this country. Over 8.5 million veterans depend on the VA for their health care. So the shutdown is threatening to cut off $6 billion in monthly checks to over 5 million veterans. Why veterans? The people who literally put their lives on the line for our country being used as a bargaining chip in this debate is a mystery to me. Maybe you can answer it for me.
Well, I think the American people are really the bargaining chip here, and that they have put many, many lives in peril and many, many lives at risk, at least financially. When we sign an enlistment contract, it isn't just a physical contract. It is a social contract. It's a moral contract. We're going to show up to work every day and do this job to the absolute best of our ability and training. And then at the end of the day, you're going to be there for us when we come home with broken bodies, when we come home with broken minds, and when we don't come home at all, you're going to be here for our families. And so that contract is being broken right now, and I find that absolutely shameful, that we can't figure out a way to put politics aside, GOP, and put military families first. I mean, last week we had a debacle where bereavement benefits weren't being paid to some 5 service members who died on the front line. I think that is one of the most unfortunate outcomes. But we can end this, Karen. We can end this tonight. We can end this Monday morning by simply passing a clean CR. We can debate about entitlements. We can debate about Obamacare, which I think, by the way, is the law of the land.
But
I think
also
we can debate
will
about
benefit some of our veterans, by the way.
Absolutely, but I think we can debate about a whole host of fiscal issues that this country has to come to terms with. What we cannot do is hold veterans hostage to our political questions.
Right. You know, John, obviously the impact of the debate around the world is something we've been hearing a lot about, the markets and what have you. The political bickering, though, in Washington even grabbed the attention of the Taliban this week, and they said in a statement, yes, this is the Taliban, quote, the American people should realize that their politicians play with their destinies as well as the destinies of other oppressed nations for the sake of their personal vested interests. Now, you know, John, when I read that, it made me angry because I thought of the people that I know who are serving on the front lines, and I thought, you know what, that is not what they should have to be dealing with right now, nor should they be having to worry about what's going on with benefits back home with their families or when they get out of the military. I mean, you've been there. What would you feel like if you were still in Afghanistan or Iraq and this situation was unfolding back home?
I was actually in Iraq in 2011, and so there was an issue there about whether or not we were going to get paid. And I think it was a situation where 1 week, we had to work for free for 1 week, and we'd get it a week later. And it kind of hurts, right? I mean, you're out there, you're putting your life on the line, and you have the smallest percentage ever in the history of our country serving in a time of war, which is about 1% of the population. I think, it's been a long drumbeat to this point, whether it was the 2011 issues when I was there in regards to the budget issues and the debt ceiling. And then we got into sequestration. So a lot of these, there was an issue earlier in the year about military kids missing the first 5 days of school this year.
Right. And
so we've been tossed around like a political chip for a very long time. And that's why we struck back so hard with that, with the ad from Reg, who's a World War II veteran, basically saying, hey, I've never seen this in my lifetime. And some stuff has to be above reproach. And, the federal government and using the federal government as some type of bargaining chip, there's real effects to real people that are both on active duty who could get extended, their deployment extended because we're not training people to take them over, or your benefits of a World War II veteran when they return home. These aren't issues that we should be using as bargaining chips at this point.
Goldie, last to you, 2 days before he was killed in Afghanistan, actually one of the service members whose death benefits got sort of caught up in this whole thing wrote this on his Facebook page, and I'll read it to you. It says, quote, Jesus, make up your minds. I will protect the being of my country with my life, but do not go effing with the men and women that protect your sorry asses. I mean, that's pretty blunt.
Simplify.
Right,
Hoorah.
right. Hoo-ah is
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely. And that really sort of spells it out that, I've always said that, freedom has a different taste for the protected than those who do the serving. At the end of the day, there are young men and women, 18, 19, 20 years old, who are out there putting their lives in harm's way for us every day. Yep. And some of them did it as a last resort. Some of them grew up with it and did it by choice. But this isn't a draft. This is a volunteer operation. Yep. And so to find out that my son or daughter, I have children this age who are putting their lives on the line every day, and then they can't count on their government to be there. Right. I think that is probably one of the most shameful outcomes that I've seen in this. But, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of people in and out of service who are being impacted by this in very detrimental ways. And we've got to come together as a nation and demand that our Congress do us better.
I agree. I would also like to see us come together as a nation. And while I love that people got sort of up in arms last week over the death benefits, I think we need to be up in arms that people are still dying in Afghanistan. John Saltz and Goldie Taylor, thank you both so much for your time and for your service to this country.